Hi, this is Bob Lepine from Truth for Life with Alistair Begg. We're heard daily and weekends on Bible School Radio, 91.3 KDKR Decatur, Dallas-Fort Worth, and on 91.3 KYJC Commerce.
Portions of KDKR programming do not necessarily reflect the views of this station, its management, or staff.
Prudent Money with Bob Brooks is sponsored by the Prudent Money Foundation on 91.3.
Well, are you buying into the $1 million myth? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. If you got a question for me, I want to invite you to go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com. Anything regarding money and stewardship, I would love to hear your questions. If it's something that requires a little bit more than an email can handle, we can block a little bit of time over the phone by going to my calendar on that same site, prudentmoney.com, and requesting a time. So very easy to get information. I want to be a resource there for you, as well as make sure that you know about the risk assessment tool that we have on the website. This is something that I've built myself, and it's through decades of working with people and really figuring out what is your true risk level. Your risk level could be one of 4 different levels. It goes safe money is the very first one. That's the most conservative. Then conservative, moderate, and growth. And what I find is that the people who are truly successful at getting to retirement have a handle on what their risk level is, and they invest accordingly to what that risk level is. I think it's just so very important. I see so many people that are taking way more risk than they're really wired to take. And it causes a lot of problems. So what I do is I put together a small personal assessment for you so that you know exactly why you are what you are. Tells you your risk level and why. And then there is about 2 or 3 pages of information that can help you implement. And of course, if you have any questions, need any help, you can always go back to prudentmoney.com and let me know. So there's no cost to that. There is no obligation. It's all there as a resource to help you out. And also, last thing, if you didn't know, we have a lot of people who go to the podcast and listen to the podcast on their own time. And that can be accessed and signed up for on any podcasting platform, Apple, Spotify, you name it. And we're on each one of those platforms. You can also go to prudentmoney.com and hear it there as well. We do post that about 10-15 minutes after the show, and it's there for you to get in and hear at your leisure. So get all that housekeeping out of the way. There's a lot of resources. All start at prudentmoney.com. At the beginning of the program, I said what the title of today's talk is, and it's, are you buying into the $1 million myth? Well, I said that yesterday, right? If you listened yesterday, you heard, hey, wait a minute, is he doing the same one again? No, this is part 2, and we're talking about what the biggest myth that I see in pop culture finance, and it is that if you want to retire, you simply have to have $1 million put back. And I can't even begin to tell you what is fundamentally wrong about that statement. But we'll get into that again, just because I think it's good to talk a little bit about it. This is a survey from Schroders 2024 U.S. Retirement Survey. And they indicate that Americans with access to employer-sponsored retirement plans believe they'll need $1.2 million to have a sound retirement. Now it's $1.2 million. Doesn't tell you if inflation is built into that number, is that 1.2 million in today's dollars or in 20 years from now? It didn't tell you the time period, doesn't tell you the need, doesn't tell you anything except you need $1.2 million. Why not 0.3 or 0.4? 1.2 million is the number. The Americans, and I love the way this sentence comes across because it makes you think about everybody's got a 401k plan. They all agree. Everybody agrees $1.2 million is the number. I can't tell you how absolutely ridiculous it is. 46% expect to have less than $500,000 in savings in retirement, including 23% who said they have less than $250,000 in retirement. I told you yesterday that I could put together a plan if you had $500,000 that you're starting today. That if you're assuming you're age 67, taking retirement, taking a withdrawal off that $500,000, doing it the right way so you don't run out of money, you could easily pull out, even with guaranteed investments, because guaranteed investments are paying so high today, you could pull out $95,000 a year. Now you got to pay a little taxes on that, but you could pull out $95,000. If you've paid off debt, that's a lot of money. Even with a house payment, that's still a lot of money. And there's so many ways to build that's why they call it a custom retirement plan, because it's different for everybody. Then my favorite part of the survey, and then we'll head into the new stuff here in a minute. A poll indicates those who have allocations of just 29% to stock and a staggering, they say in the article, 28% to cash. The former is too low and the latter is dangerously high. Well, newsflash, it's 29% to stocks to somebody who is very conservatively based. It's not a bad percentage. And 28% to a cash account that's paying 5%, it's not a bad deal either. You see, there's just a lot of information here that doesn't make sense to me. More than a quarter of plan participants say they have no idea how their retirement assets are allocated. That's a real shame. Why do it if you're not going to have a purpose for it? And I think it's a lot more than 28%. Include your financial advisor. There's one thing that one of the many ways a financial advisor can be helpful is to include your 401k plan in the analysis of your overall financial situation. I know that for those of my clients who take me up on it, they're always welcome to send me on a quarterly basis their retirement plans, and I'll look over them for them and say, hey, I would change this or I wouldn't change that, because I know their financial situation. I have a one client who sends like clockwork, and he always puts in there, not bad. But I've got him very conservatively invested, and which is a fit for where he is and when he's heading into what should be a really nice retirement. So why people are stressed. And I want to suggest to you today that they are stressed about money for two reasons. First, they don't know what they have. They're not organized. They don't have a plan. That's why I love everybody who's got a 401k plan, and they suggest that they need 1.2 million to retire. How did they come up with 1.2 million when a large percentage of people don't even have a plan to tell them what they need? So you can kind of see how this doesn't make sense. And the second is they are listening to the $1 million myth. And there's just so much to that is flawed as a concept. You need what you need to cover your needs. That kind of almost rhymes. You need what you need to cover your needs. And that's the number. I said yesterday about a phrase that I used to talk about is know your unknowns. and your unknowns are so very important, because if you know your unknowns, you know what path you're on, and you're congruent with your risk level, you're not stressing. You might stress a little bit, but you're not stressing nearly as much as people who don't know. And by the way, 88% are concerned with how the 2024 U.S. presidential election will impact their retirement savings. What a three-ring circus that is. We're going to talk about that, but we'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk a little bit about how to make retirement planning a little bit more effective, some tips. Yesterday I started out, make a plan to be out of debt. The problem with debt is that debt takes up cash flow. And what the key to retirement is, it's cash flow. You don't want that cash flow going to debt. If you can pay your house off, that's great. If you can pay credit cards off, that's even better. You might even wait a couple of extra years to work so that you can get out of debt. It makes things so much better, and it's such a big deal to get out of debt. And the way that you'll feel when you get out of debt is just amazing. Number 2, accumulate cash. And always the question is, well, how much? How much you feel that you need. I have a client that anytime one of the questions I always ask is, how's your cash account? What levels are you at? And he always tells me, I think he's at about 125 or 150,000 in cash. And he'll always apologize to me for that. And I go, why should you apologize? I want you to be comfortable with your cash account. And if it takes $150,000 to be comfortable, then be comfortable with $150,000. Whatever that is. Just make sure, though, that you have at least enough cash to cover the major things that can pop up. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. We're up against a break. Stick around. I'll be right back. Hello, this is Bob Brooks. Proverbs 22:3 and Proverbs 27:12 are the exact same verse word for word. I call them the stewardship verses of risk. A prudent person foresees danger and takes precautions. The simpleton goes blindly on and suffers the consequences. On the Prudent Money Radio Show, we teach about risk, how to identify it, how to figure it out, and what to do about it. We believe that to be a prudent steward, you have to be a good risk manager. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show on Bible School Radio 91.3. Prudent Money, home of the modern-day steward movement.
God created each of us in His image, and He doesn't make mistakes. So what are we to make of transgenderism? I'm John Monroe. Wednesday on The Verdict, I invite you to join us as we continue looking at the teaching of Jesus on these important issues and consider transgenderism in light of the Word of God. Wednesday on The Verdict.
The Verdict, weekday mornings at 10:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Got a question for me? Head to the website, prudentmoney.com, and send it in. I'll get you taken care of. It's that easy. So accumulate cash was the last one we talked about. Downsize your house. I think this can be a wonderful idea, but when you downsize, it's got to be a big difference to make sense. I probably wouldn't downsize if I could only save $500. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't save $500 and move to a house that you really want, but I'm saying for the sake of downsizing, it needs to make a difference in the price. And, if it's something that, think of it this way, if it's something that gets you completely out of debt, has some and has $20,000 or $30,000 left over, that's a pretty good deal. But make sure you make it count. You're going to think I'm really crazy, but consider renting. Have you ever sat down and added up all the costs of ownership that go along with a house, plus payroll tax? Plus property taxes, and consider though there's a bit of freedom, a lot of freedom that goes with renting, and how that might fit your retirement. If it works with the cash flow, if it means you could move out and be near your kids and have the freedom, because with a house, as you know, you don't have much freedom. You don't have any freedom really at all. So just something to consider, because that's just like a taboo thing. Oh, you never want to rent, you want to own. Hey, it's whatever you value, whatever makes sense for you and that you can make sense financially. Have a long-term care insurance, I didn't say policy, even though you can get one, strategy in place. Figure out what you need in a worst-case scenario. This isn't a recommendation to go out and buy a policy. It's just to figure out, hey, what am I going to do if it happens? And, am I going to sell assets? And then figure out what you're going to do. Figure out that game plan for the worst case scenario. And just remember, it's expensive, especially when you're talking about two people. And so you've got to figure out how you're going to handle it. And see what that gap is. Then go and price long-term care. You might be surprised that you don't have as big of a gap, or maybe you do have a big gap. Remember, this is worst case scenario, hoping it doesn't happen. And if it does, you'll be ready for it. Include your adult children into the conversation. After all, I know this may not come across right, but that we're talking about their inheritance. They may want to chip in. They may want to make sure that that cost is taken care of. It's not a bad conversation to have. Work until age 70 is the next one. Why 70? 70 is the age that you get the largest amount of benefit from Social Security. It entitles you to either add a couple more years before you would have retired, to pay off debt, to accumulate cash, to accumulate money for retirement. I think, and especially in this day and age where people are living a little bit longer. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and she said, "Hey, my husband enjoys what he does for a living." 'Cause I asked if he's ever thinking about retiring, and she said, "Why quit if you're enjoying it?" And that's, once again, retirement is whatever is driven by your values. And that's what is so very, very important. But taking advantage of Social Security, it can be a very large sum of money when you add the max for both the husband and the wife. And you might say, oh, well, Social Security is not going to be around for me. Social Security definitely can be around. Now, it's not quite as easy as I kind of got a little laugh out of this. When Biden said the other night that I'm just going to raise taxes on those with $400,000 above, and it fixes it for good. Well, not really. But here's the thing: if they raise taxes, or they actually rearrange the benefits a little bit, they can add on to the deficit, which starts in 2033 or 32, I think. And they can add and make it work for another 50 or 60 years. And I believe that that'll happen. There is no president that is going to want to have Social Security fail on their watch. You want to talk about creating a legacy. Whew, it's a big legacy. So this is how it works. There's two parts to Social Security, very simple. There's a trust fund, and there's payroll taxes that come in. Between the money in the trust fund and the money that comes in from payroll taxes, a benefit goes out and pays people and gets people taken care of. Well, in 2032 or 33, I can't remember exactly, the trust fund money runs out. The payroll taxes go in the trust and out the trust. It's a pass through, and with those payroll taxes, that will take care of roughly 80 or 75 to 80% of Social Security if they don't do anything about it. My guess is they'll do something about it. It would be political suicide not to do something about it. And it's really not that difficult to at least put a Band-Aid on it. I doubt they'll ever fix it. But for those of us who are in our 50s and probably 40s on up, I don't think you got much to worry about. Create benchmarks. And this is tracking expenses very closely. The benchmark is at the end of the year, and it tells you exactly where you have to be as far as your total assets to make sure that you're on track. That's the thing about a plan. A plan provides these benchmarks and will tell you if you are on track. Then the last one is don't shy away from fixed guaranteed annuities. They are paying 5, and I think the largest one I've seen so far is 5.6. They used to be at 6%. Guaranteed, locked in, no gotchas. I can't believe there's a lot of people who use them. I think because they're guaranteed and they make sense. Okay, real quick, I wanted to touch on this. Dear Bob, I heard your interview with Chuck Bentley and was wondering what your thoughts were given the debate the other night. We were talking on the day of the debate about what this race looks like, and I made the comment, well, we'll see after the debate how things really look. This is not, because there's a lot of people, and back up, there's a lot of people who want to know how's this, 88% are concerned it's going to affect their retirement savings. This is the way I would look at it, and this is not a political statement, not into that, not telling you who I'm going to vote for, not into that, not for, not against. It's simply perception. If your entire political party, the Democratic Party, believe that President Biden is not cognitively up to the task of being president, you've got a problem. Because the entire Democratic Party is going to win that argument. I don't personally see how he has a road to stay in it. I said this the day before the debate. I think he's not going to make it to election, and in the capacity of president. I mean, I think he'll be president, but I don't think he'll be up for re-election. They'll pick somebody else. Because, once again, it is a situation of cognitive decline. Now, I don't believe he's got Alzheimer's or dementia or anything. I believe, and I'm very familiar with this, I believe he's got, and I'm obviously no doctor, it looks to me like he's got Parkinson's with a cognitive decline, more so than dementia. If you read up on it, you'll definitely see it in the symptoms. But, is he, I think the cognitive decline prohibits him from being effective as a leader. The Democratic Party certainly does feel that way. And they have their opportunity to handpick what they feel like is the perfect candidate. And that's a whole other story. So this is going to get interesting. The uncertainty that this builds into the scenario, I think, is going to create short-term problems for the market. There's bigger issues out there that I think will bring the market down into a bear market at some point. But if you're really looking at it, I think it's the short-term uncertainty that this is going to create. Because if they do replace him, which I think they will, that's just going to be an interesting thing to watch. But if they replace him, who they replace him with? I mean, it could be a Hillary Clinton, it could be a Michelle Obama, I've heard that name. It could be the governor from New York, from Colorado. California. There we go. So anyway, there you have it. I do see some very short-term volatility, maybe a correction of 15 to 20% before the race, and then we'll see how it shakes out because it's very, very close before it's November. It's already July, so that's my feelings about it. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me? Please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.